A cloned Superman with the mind of a child, and a shattered man about to become Metropolis's worst nightmare. The third season of My Adventures with Superman didn't just premiere with an episode, it premiered with a death sentence for everything Clark Kent has built. If you blinked at the end, you missed the reveal that changes the future of DC on screen. Stick with me, because today we're decoding the birth of Cyborg Superman.
The premiere, titled Into the New World, opens in the Fortress of Solitude. In Season 2, Zor-El's digital essence helped build this Arctic base before being erased, and now Clark is still learning what the fortress is truly capable of. He hasn't fully unlocked the scope of his own power yet. He understands pieces, but the full picture remains out of reach. What he finds inside the fortress is extraordinary. A collection of noble, elegant, and ancient Kryptonian robots eager to help him explore his heritage and history. For DC fans, this is an immediate and deliberate reference. Seeing them pop up here in the animated universe is the show acknowledging the larger cultural moment the character is having right now. The scene feels warm at first, but the episode plants a threat within it that won't detonate until later.
As Cal leaves, the robots deliver a message he doesn't hear. The words are precise and ominous. He will learn their ways, either willingly or by force. That line isn't just window dressing. Considering what we know about Brainiac's track record of preserving Kryptonian culture through force and domination, the question the show is reeling is genuinely unsettling. Did purging Brainiac's code from the fortress solve the problem, or did it create a new one? Do you guys think the Fortress of Solitude will become the new villain of the season? This threat from the Kryptonian robots is real. But before we move on, if you're a fan of DC theories like this, smash that like button and subscribe to Comic Chronicles. We're covering every detail of this season.
Meanwhile, Kara steps into a sealed chamber inside the fortress and performs what essentially acts as a digital exorcism, wiping the last trace of Brainiac's algorithm from the system. It's a decisive act. She wants this chapter of her life gone. But before it vanishes, Brainiac's code delivers a warning. It tells her she's making a mistake. Kara leaves the fortress and flies up into orbit, alone with her thoughts. Brainiac spent years convincing her that humans would always see her as a monster, a conqueror, a threat. She dismantled his plan, chose the right side, and yet the fear he planted in her hasn't faded. She still questions what her purpose is now that the war is over. This is the emotional backbone for her character this season. Kara trying to build an identity that is genuinely hers, not one imposed by her captor. The timing is no accident. DC Studios launched their live-action Supergirl casting during this same window, with Millie Alcock navigating her own version of this journey. Both Karas are asking the exact same question from different angles. The episode then pulls back to something much lighter, and the contrast is deliberate. It's Halloween, and Kara is celebrating at the Kent farm, fully immersed in the kind of everyday human joy she never had access to while under Brainiac's control. She and Jimmy have been spending a lot of time together. They run through a corn maze, bob for apples, walk through the pumpkin patch, and wear matching costumes, the Challengers of the Unknown, a classic DC team, with Kara dressed as June Robbins and Jimmy as Ace Morgan. The fact that they chose a team defined by exploration and discovering things together says a lot about how they view each other. Jimmy, meanwhile, is building his social media brand, live streaming from the farm. Kara steps into the frame as herself, relaxed and laughing, something the show briefly acknowledges as a significant operational security risk. If Jimmy is publicly friends with Supergirl, observant people might start connecting the dots about his relationship with Clark. Lois sees what's brewing between Jimmy and Kara and can't resist giving a little nudge. Clark, sensibly, asks her to let it play out. The two of them are figuring things out, he says, and they need to do it without someone orchestrating it for them. Jimmy, when he's honest with himself about it, doesn't feel worthy of Kara. He believes she deserves to figure out her own identity before attaching herself to anyone, and he certainly doesn't think he's the obvious choice for someone like her. What he fails to realize is just how genuinely happy she is when she's with him.
And of course, we couldn't wrap up this breakdown without talking about the biggest visual change of this premiere, the brand new suits for our Kryptonian duo.
I really dug Superman's new suit, especially that awesome detail of the cape draping over his shoulders, which gives Clark a much more imposing and heroic presence. Plus, we finally have a victory for the traditionalists. Superman is officially wearing his classic red trunks over his pants again. The only detail I wasn't a huge fan of was that yellow line separating the blue from the red on his shoulders, even if it matches the yellow accents on his waist and boots. But overall, the look is excellent. As for Supergirl's uniform, I have to admit I'm a bit torn. It looks cool, but I'm not a big fan of the pants and skirt combo. To me, you either pick one or the other, so the design doesn't feel too cluttered. To be completely honest, I still much prefer the suit Kara wore at the end of Season 2 over this new version.
But what about you? Are you on Team Trunks on the outside? Or do you prefer the more modern look? And what are your thoughts on Kara wearing a skirt over her pants? Let me know down below. I want to see a war in the comments. And if you want to grab a classic Superman action figure rocking this traditional look, check out our YouTube shopping shelf right down below. We've got items every DC collector needs to own.
While Jimmy and Kara navigate the very early stages of their connection, Clark and Lois are dealing with a different kind of pressure. The question of what comes next for them. Clark wants to move forward. He found a real estate listing for a rural property. He's thinking about getting a dog. He's picturing a life beyond the apartment and the Daily Planet, something that looks like the Kent farm where he grew up, a place where he could build something permanent with Lois. Lois is terrified. The show has always been careful with her past, and this episode taps into it again. Lois didn't have the stable, rooted childhood Clark had. She grew up constantly moving from one military base to another, following Sam's transfers, never putting down roots deep enough to matter. A house in a good school district doesn't feel like a dream to her. It feels like a threat. Too much, too soon, too real. Clark reads her immediately. He doesn't push. He understands, at least intellectually, that this is something she has to reach on her own terms. The dynamic is written with real emotional intelligence. These are two people who clearly love each other and are genuinely compatible, navigating the part of relationships that no amount of chemistry can shortcut. The process of learning what home means to someone.
The emotional temperature drops when Sam Lane arrives at the farm. He's changed. The man who once commanded Task Force X and built a military apparatus around the fear of aliens is now operating in a fundamentally different mode. He pulls Lois aside and hands her a compass, a sentimental object meant to help her find her true north in life. He's making up for lost time. But, as she suspects, he's mixing the personal with the professional. Following Brainiac's invasion, Sam was cleared of his previous charges and returned to active duty. He retired from Cadmus and was transferred to the Pentagon, which gave him access to intel far beyond anything he'd touched before. What he's discovered now is that a server at a decommissioned facility suffered a security breach. The facility housed something classified under the name Project CALIBAN. Sam can't investigate directly. He's being closely monitored, but he wants Lois to look into it quietly, and he specifically asks her to bring her friend, the Man of Steel, along for the mission. Clark, Lois, Jimmy, and Kara head to the facility together, and what they find there reshapes everything the audience thought they understood about what the US government was really doing in the shadows.
The facility is in ruins. Evidence of violence and structural destruction is visible everywhere. Something broke out of there, or destroyed everything on its way in. While investigating, the team comes across a mutant deer-wolf hybrid. The building was designed to contain something biological. Venturing deeper, they find a lab equipped for genetic experimentation on a massive scale. The government wasn't just defending against Kryptonian threats, it was trying to create them. Using tissue samples and genetic material recovered after the zero-day incursion, American military scientists were splicing human and Kryptonian DNA. The direct touchstone here is Connor Kent, the comic book Superboy, a clone created from Superman's own genetic material. The concept has appeared in multiple DC animated properties, including Young Justice and Titans. The show reaches into that history and builds something new out of it. This was the third attempt at a military solution.
the final desperate gamble after the failure of both Cadmus and Task Force X.
In the deepest part of the lab, the team finds rows of stasis tanks. Most of the cloning experiments failed. The evidence is disturbing. Kara notices a cell labeled B1Z. She identifies a living extraterrestrial inside, one that survived the experiments. Before they can process this discovery, a creature attacks. A canine alien with freeze breath, a direct nod to the Genomorphs from Young Justice. The team falls back, passes through a decontamination chamber, and emerges into the impossible. Two ecosystems existing side by side within the lab, a Kryptonian forest and an Earth forest, growing together in the exact same space.
A scientist named George Otto Binder had worked in this environment. Here, the show pauses to deliver one of the most significant tributes in the entire episode. Otto Binder was a real-life comic book writer who died in 1974 at the age of 63. He co-created Supergirl. He co-created Bizarro. He co-created the Legion of Superheroes. He helped launch Brainiac as a character. He created Krypto, Lucy Lane, and was instrumental in developing Jimmy Olsen into the recognizable figure he became. Essentially, much of Clark Kent's inner circle as we know it today originated from the imagination of a single man, and the show gives his name to the scientist who tried to raise a cloned Kryptonian with kindness instead of weaponizing him.
Clark's X-ray vision finds Binder's body buried nearby. No one knows who killed him. The investigation is cut short when the clone attacks. He is massive, shirtless, and childlike. He doesn't speak well. He approaches the world with wonder and confusion in equal measure. It's a remixed Bizarro, designated B1Z, and the episode confirms this without ever using the word. He isn't malicious. He isn't inherently aggressive. He is the product of a man who chose to raise an experiment like a son, leaving behind audio recordings playing on a loop, gentle educational sessions reminding B1Z to be kind. Kara is deeply moved by this. She never had that kind of affection. Brainiac took her and molded her into a weapon. Binder took a genetic accident and tried to build a person. The contrast completely breaks her down, in the best way possible. Bizarro is an iconic figure, and if you want to have the classic storylines that inspired this episode on your shelf, I've left the Amazon link for The Death of Superman and Reign of the Superman down in the description and in the pinned comment. Also, check out our YouTube shopping showcase below the video for exclusive Man of Steel collectibles. What the team doesn't realize until it's almost too late is that something else in the lab was monitoring them through a drone. From one of the cells, a prisoner calls for help. It seems to be a victim. It isn't. A fluid, mechanically agile white robot emerges, a design heavily inspired by the White Martians from DC mythology. It is fast, adaptable, and capable of holding its own, even against Clark. It grabs the drone, incorporates it into its own form as a head, and reconstructs itself into a full attack configuration. It breathes fire. It has the profile of an evolved Kryptonian war machine, the same class of weaponry the military had been scavenging since Zero Day. The ensuing fight is brutal. Ultimately, the robot self-destructs after failing to defeat Clark, but not before the lab is flooded. The team gets split up during the chaos.
Clark is knocked unconscious in the blast. B1Z finds him underwater. The clone pulls him to the surface, sets him down safely at the edge of the floodwaters, and then stares at him for a long moment. Calls him friend in halting, completely agenda-free English, and vanishes into the Halloween night with his Genomorph companion. The weight of that word, delivered imperfectly and entirely without malice, is massive. The comic book Bizarro is almost always framed as a dark mirror, a corruption, something that shows Superman what he could become if something inside him broke. Here, the show reframes the relationship. This isn't a threat. This is a being who was taught to be good by someone who chose to teach kindness, and who is now practicing what he learned.
The final shots of B1Z in the city are remarkable. He wanders through the Halloween crowds, wrapped in a red blanket for warmth. A little kid gives him a lollipop, and he stares at it like it's the most extraordinary thing he's ever seen. He stops in the town square and looks up at the image of Superman.
and Binder's recorded voice plays over the moment, reminding him to be kind, to be curious, to be good. He intends to follow in those footsteps.
The episode closes its emotional loop with Clark and Lois back at their apartment, in costume, handing out candy to kids knocking on their door. They are laughing. The domestic squabble over the rural property is put on hold. Not resolved, but suspended in something warm and present. A little boy shows up at the door dressed as Superman. He looks up at Clark, who is wearing the exact same costume, and his eyes go wide with the belief that he is looking at the real Superman. If he only knew. Clark and Lois share a look, and in that moment, the show communicates everything it wants to say about why Clark chooses to be Superman. It's not about the fight. It's about the kid at the door who looks at that symbol and feels safe. Across the room, Kara watches them. She reaches out and pulls Jimmy closer. Their story isn't a bold declaration yet. It's a quiet movement, but it is the start of something.
And then the tone completely shatters. Lex Luthor, now operating out of LexCorp, the company he founded after Waller's downfall, reviews footage from the facility. It was his robot, his surveillance drone, his operation, watching from a distance as Superman and his team accidentally dismantled what was left of Project CALIBAN. Deathstroke is with him. Slade asks if he wants to retrieve the drone. Lex doesn't. He's moved past it because he has a different plan now, one that requires something much more personal. Hank Henshaw, a decorated military pilot who was shot down fighting Brainiac's forces in Season 2, a man presumed dead. Slade confirms Henshaw is alive, but barely. The final image is Hank's body, broken and shattered, hooked up to a ventilator in a medical bay, breathing through machines. He's not a person anymore, not fully. He's what's left of one. Lex Luthor is going to turn him into something else.
DC fans know exactly what that means. Hank Henshaw becomes Cyborg Superman, one of the most disturbing villains in the mythology, because he wears the most trusted symbol in the world while being entirely hollow inside. He is the face of the Man of Steel on a machine that feels nothing, serving a man with no moral floor. In the comics, Cyborg Superman emerged as one of the replacement heroes following the death of Superman. He wore the crest, he was welcomed as a savior, and then he burned entire cities to the ground. The episode ends on that image, quiet and cold, as Lex's ambition finds its perfect vessel.
There are several threads this episode deliberately leaves unresolved. The Kryptonian robots in the fortress have already demonstrated they can be a threat. If any fragment of Brainiac's code survived Kara's purge and found its way into those machines, Clark and Kara returning to the base won't be a reunion with allies. It will be a confrontation with something that has been waiting for them. Bizarro's arc feels like it's building towards something meaningful and ultimately costly. This is a character formed from Clark's DNA, shaped by a man who believed in kindness and who has already saved Superman's life. The question is what happens when Lex finds out B1Z exists and decides to try and weaponize him too. And then there's Cyborg Superman. Once Lex transforms Hank Henshaw, Metropolis will face a Superman who looks the part, who wears the symbol, who might even save people, at least at first, because that's more useful to Lex than a monster. The corruption of a symbol is far more dangerous than the absence of one. The third season of My Adventures with Superman knows exactly what it's doing. This premiere moves slowly in some moments and deliberately in all of them, laying the emotional groundwork for threats that are already circling. The show has earned the investment it asks of its audience.
It is a great time to be a Superman fan. If this breakdown helped you catch everything that went down in Into the New World, let me know in the comments where you think Bizarro's arc is heading this season. And make sure to subscribe so you don't miss our full breakdowns for the rest of Season 3.